your Bibles to the book of Ezekiel. Book of Ezekiel in chapter 9. I've listened to three messages by another pastor on Ezekiel. And I thought, my, because he's going through it a chapter at a time. Chapter a week. And
you know chapter a year, don't you?
Yeah. So I don't think I could do it if I tried. But let that be as it may. And I haven't agreed with everything he said. I mean, it's in conflict with what I already have down in my notes and what I've come up in studying, but that's all right. I'll let him be wrong. So. Ezekiel chapter 9, and last week we had introduced this 9th chapter and spent half of the week on introducing the 9th chapter. And then we covered the introduction of the first point, which was, the first point, if you recall, is the summons. The summons, which we find in verse 1 of this 9th chapter. He cried also in mine ears with a loud voice, saying, cause them that have charge over the city to draw near, even every man with his destroying weapon in his hand. And that was the summons. He summoned those who were charged over the city to come near. Last week in the introductory part, we said that these things were written for our instruction, for our learning. We looked at Romans chapter 15 and verse 4, where it stated that, made reference to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, along about verse 11, which tells us basically the same thing. These things were written for our admonition, for our instruction, for our learning. And as we're here and been going through this portion of Ezekiel, we can see what is brought forth in Romans chapter 6 and verse 23. For the wages of sin is death, destruction. And while Romans 6:23, I believe, has reference to an eternal destruction, because they are eternally lost, they're eternally without Christ. Sin in the life of Christian can bring forth death, can bring forth destruction. When you become of no use to the Lord, and you know better, will not heed his admonition, there have been many of his saints he's taken out because they weren't of any use here any longer. And so come home. And they're going to suffer loss because of that. And great loss. And we may bring out more as we go along, work our way down through this chapter concerning that. But last week we made reference also to the fact that in verse 18, the last verse of chapter 8, he said, I will deal in fury. He will deal in his hot displeasure. And that's where we're at. And this is what is come to pass. He's made a summons for those who have given charge over the city of Jerusalem, to come near. and to bring their destroying weapon in their hand. God deals in His hot displeasure. And no, you and I don't want to be on the end of His hot displeasure. Just as these, the Israelites, I'm sure, didn't want to be on the end of His hot displeasure, but He had given them warning, and we've looked at those warnings given to them from the hand of Moses. If they persisted in this lifestyle, and they did not hearken unto the words of Moses, did not hearken unto the Lord, and we have found out that His long-suffering came to an end, and now He was going to deal in fury. Just quickly, because this is still way of review from what we expounded last week, turn with me to the book of Isaiah in chapter 59. Isaiah 59, and look at verse 16. And he saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore his arm brought salvation unto him, and his righteousness is sustained him. For he put on righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation upon his head, and he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing, and was clad with zeal as a cloak. According to their deeds, accordingly he will repay fury, hot displeasure to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the islands he will repay recompense. Here in Isaiah, it is said that he is taking vengeance, he is taking recompense, he is dealing in his hot displeasure with them for their sin. The 66th chapter of Isaiah, in verse 15, tells us much the same. And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen, for the Lord God shall slay thee and call his servants by another name. And I didn't read 66:15. That's a pretty good verse, but it's not the point I wanted. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. So the Lord will deal in fury and his hot displeasure upon the workers of iniquity, upon the workers of sin. For the wages of sin is death. Is death. And that can be so to a child of God. Not eternal death. You'll still be a child of God. But you'll suffer loss of rewards. And he'll take you home now. And I think I've told you on a couple of different occasions of at least one individual I know the Lord took who stood in opposition to the Lord. In fact, stood in railing and mocking of the man of God. And the Lord took him home within a year after he was disciplined from the church. And so the Lord does take his people home who sin, and his long-suffering is done with them. He is showing Ezekiel who he is going to employ as instruments of his wrath. Take notice what he says. Take notice that how this was given to Ezekiel. Did you wonder about that as we read it? He cried also in mine ears with a loud voice. I guess if I'd have thought about it sooner, I could have titled this first subpoint under the first point, the summons. I could have titled it, Do you hear? Brother Ron said, do you hear? Do you hear? Ezekiel. God wanted Ezekiel to hear what he had to say and what he was going to do. And he's going to give, in this chapter, he gives forth instructions. He gives forth instructions to the 6 destroyers. He gives forth instructions to the one clothed in linen with the riders inkhorn. And then he gives instructions to Ezekiel, because we go down through there, and as the destroying is going on and the destroyers are destroying, Ezekiel is weeping and crying for them and ask the Lord, won't you spare, won't you have mercy, won't you have compassion on them? He cried also in mine ears with a loud voice. Has the Lord cried in your ears with a loud voice? Well, he has mine.
Yeah.
He has mine. One of the most prominent ones was at the time of salvation.
Yes.
At the time of salvation. And other times, in times of disobedience, he cried in my ear. When he called me into the ministry, he cried in my ear. And I even tried arguing with him. And for every argument I had, he had an answer. You know where the answer came from? Right here in his book. I said, okay, Lord. Okay. He cried in mine ear with a loud voice. Now, I don't think this was because Ezekiel was hard of hearing. Nowhere in our studies of the book of Ezekiel do we find that Ezekiel was hard of hearing like your pastor. But he wanted Ezekiel to hear what he had to say. It was very important. And of course, as we think about this speaks of the great force with which the one speaking spoke. This is God. This is Jehovah. This is God Almighty. This is El Shaddai. This is the one whom spoke to the children of Israel from Mount Sinai. And he spoke and he gave the 10 Commandments. And afterwards, the people said, to Moses said, you speak to us. We don't want him speaking to us no more. We're afraid. Turn with me to the book of Exodus. I love reading that, and we need to read that so you don't think your pastor's crazy and lost it. Exodus chapter 19. You look at verse 16. It said, and this is after they came to Mount Sinai, and the Lord had given Moses and Aaron them some instructions. It said, and it came to pass on the 3rd day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai, on the top of the mount, and the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. And let the priests also which come near to the Lord sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break forth upon them. And Moses didn't want to go down. Why would he?
Yeah.
He's in the presence of the Lord. Why would he want to leave there? Why would he want to go down? And Moses said unto the Lord, The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for thou charged us, saying, Set bounds about the mount, and sanctify it. And we did that. They can't get up here. And the Lord said unto him, Away, get thee down, and thou shalt come up, and thou and Aaron with thee, but let not the priests and the people break through to come up unto the Lord, lest he break forth upon them. So Moses went down unto the people, and spake unto them, and God spake all these words, saying, God spake to whom? All these words. To the nation of Israel he spoke these words from the top of Mount Sinai. Now, the Ten Commandments are given. Drop down to verse 18. And all the people saw the thunderings, and the lightnings, and the noise of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking, and when the people saw it, they removed and stood afar off. And they said unto Moses, Speak thou with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die. And Moses said unto the people, Fear not, for God has come to prove you, and that his fear may be before your faces, that ye sin not. And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. Notice verse 21. And the Lord said unto Moses, Thus thou shalt say unto the children of Israel, Ye have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. You shall say unto the people, You have seen that I have talked with you from heaven. Who did he talk with? He talked with the children of Israel from the top of Mount Sinai, from heaven. In great thunderings and lightnings, and shook with a loud voice, with a thundering voice. And the people said, Moses, you speak to us. We don't want God to speak to us. We're afraid of him, lest we die. You see, the Lord speaks with great thunderings, great sounds. He spoke to Israel. He spoke with his man Moses. He's spoken with others, and now in our text he's speaking with Ezekiel. And he's not just speaking in a soft voice. Sometimes my wife would say, Why are you yelling? I say, I'm not yelling. Well, you are too yelling. Well, you want to hear me yell? I'll yell for you. That sort of thing goes on. The Lord got in his ear and he cried with a loud voice in his ear. Why? Because of the importance of what he was to tell Ezekiel. Listen, God has important things for us to hear and to glean. And what he wanted Ezekiel to glean is that sin brings death, brings destruction. There's 6 destroyers that are going to come and destroy. As we have seen from previous chapters, 2/3 of the people are going to be slain. And 1/3 are going to be marked for salvation. And the Lord is highly provoked. He said he's going to deal in his hot displeasure. He's angered. His long suffering is over with. And now he's speaking threatenings. And he wanted a summons to go out to the destroyers. Turn with me to the book of Psalms in chapter 28. Verse 1 said, "Unto thee I will cry, O Lord my rock. Be not silent to me, lest if thou be silent to me, I become like them that go down into the pit. Hear the voice of my supplications when I cry unto thee, when I lift up my hands toward the holy oracle. Draw me not away with the wicked and with the workers of iniquity, which speak peace to their neighbors, but mischief is in their hearts. Give them according to the deeds, and according to the wickedness of their endeavors. Give them after the work of their hands. Render to them their desert. Because they regard not the works of the Lord, nor the operation of his hands. He shall destroy them, and not build them up." You see, because of their sin, because of their iniquity, God is going to destroy them, he said. Turn with me to the book of Isaiah in chapter 5. Isaiah chapter 5 and verses 12 through 16. "And the harp, and the viol, and the tablet, and pipe, and wine are in their feast. But they regard not the work of the Lord." Notice that. They regard not the work of the Lord. They have no interest in the work of the Lord. They have all these things, he said, but there's no interest in the work of the Lord. Boy, it sounds like the day we're in. I mean our Baptist churches. Those sitting in the pews of our Baptist churches. There's no real interest in the work of the Lord. Every man is caring more about his own things and the things of his life and what he wants to do than he is about the things of the Lord. Neither consider the operation of his hands. Therefore, my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge, and their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. Therefore hell hath enlarged herself, and opened her mouth without measure, and their glory, and their multitude, and their pomp. And he that rejoiceth shall descend into it. And the mean man shall be brought down, and the mighty man shall be humbled, and the eyes of the lofty shall be humbled. But the Lord of hosts shall be exalted in judgment, and God that is holy shall be sanctified in righteousness. Is that not what he's told Ezekiel? The same thing. Listen, those mighty men in Israel, they're going to be brought down. They're going to be humbled. The mean man is going to be humbled. He's going to be brought down. But I'll be exalted. I'll be exalted in judgment, but I'll be exalted. You see, the Lord's going to be exalted. Listen, in closing, He wants us to hear. Brother Ron, do you hear? I think it's Brother Ron. That's your favorite question, right? Do you hear?
Sometimes.
Do you hear what the Lord has to say? Listen, His Word is full of it. He wants us to hear. Turn with me to the book of Proverbs. Book of Proverbs in chapter 7. And look at verse 24. Hearken unto me now, therefore. And listen, unlike our word here, most of the time in Scriptures when you see hear to His people or hearken to His people, it's not only hearing. You got to hear first, but it's hearing with obedience. You hear me pray often that I might hear and might obey. Give me hearing ears to hear and an obedient heart to do. And I will, O Lord, covered under the word hearken, covered under the word heareth in Scripture. You see, hearken unto me now, therefore, O ye children, and attend to the words of my mouth. I mean, he cried it with a loud voice in mine ear. Hearken! Why? Because it's important. What I've got to say is important to you. He said, let not thine heart decline to her ways. Go not astray in her paths. For she hath cast down many wounded. Yea, many strong men have been slain by her. Her house is the way to hell, going down to the chambers of death. You see, what he had to say was important. Hearken. Listen up. Listen, you need to hear it. It means with emphasis. And that's what he cried in mine ear with a loud voice. It is because emphasis is needed on, and what I'm going to tell you is important. So he gets right in the ear and he says it, cries it with a loud voice. His word is full of hearkens to you and I. He's crying it with a loud voice right in our ear. Do we hear? Do we hear? Do we hearken to the word of the Lord? Isaiah chapter 51. Isaiah 51 and verse 1. Said, hearken to me, ye that follow after righteousness, ye that seek the Lord. Look unto the rock whence ye are hewn, and to the hole of the pit whence ye are digged. Listen, look to the Lord. That's important. Listen, Lord willing, I may be preaching on the cursed and the blessed at the conference. From Jeremiah, the 17th chapter, verses 5 through 8 there, it gives the cursed. And the cursed, the thought there is the cursed look to the ways of man. They look to man. They're not looking to the Lord. And then the blessed are those who fear the Lord. And they're looking to the Lord. Oh, it's so easy for us to take our eyes off the Lord, isn't it? And do our thing. Do our inclinations. Hearken. Listen. One last verse. The book of James. The book of James, chapter 2. And he tells us this in verse 5. Hearken, my beloved brethren, hath not God chosen the poor of this world rich in faith and heirs of the kingdom which he hath promised in them that love him? Listen, he said, hearken. He's getting about ready to tell us something important. He's getting to tell us something important about the poor people and about our shunning the poor people and about our showing preference to those of goodly apparel and those who have riches and wealth. He'd say, here, you sit here. This is a good seat. This is the best seat in the house. You sit right here. Oh, no, bro. Come on back here, bro. No, you're back. We got a seat for you back here. And he said, hearken, my beloved brethren. And as he goes on through that chapter, these things ought not to be. As a child of God and in the house of God. Know ye not that ye are the poor? You were poor and destitute and wretched and blind. And the Lord saved you by His grace and by His mercy. All right, we'll close there tonight. Shall we stand?